Kıbrıslı kadınların direniş hareketi "Kadınlar Eve Yürüyor", adanın bölünmesine karşı protesto düzenlemekle kalmayıp, terk etmek zorunda kaldıkları evlerine ulaşmak için yaratılan sınırları aşmak amacıyla binlerce kadını bir araya getirmişti. Yürüyüşlerine 1975 yılında başlayan ve 12 yıl gibi bir süre ara verdikten sonra 1980'lerde yeniden harekete geçen Kadınlar Eve Yürüyor hareketi, mültecilerin evlerine dönüşünü ve Kıbrıs'ın yeniden birleşmesini odak noktası haline getiren önemli bir kadın inisiyatifi olarak ortaya çıkmış ve bu inisiyatif siyasi partilerden bağımsız bir şekilde hareket etmiştir. Kıbrıs'taki basın ve siyasetçilerden gelen eleştirilere rağmen kadınlar büyük zorlukların üstesinden gelerek mücadelelerine devam etti, yeşil hattı birkaç kez aştı, silahlı askerlerle yüz yüze geldi, taktiklerini değiştirdi ve kendi dönemlerinin kadınları için öncü bir ruh geliştirdiler. Belgesel yönetmeni Andreou, bu Kıbrıslı kadın direniş hareketinin yeni keşfedilmiş kayıtlarını gün yüzüne çıkartarak bir belgesel hazırlıyor. Arşiv görüntülerine ulaşarak kadın hareketinin organizatörleri ve kendi ailesinin anılarını birleştiren Andreou, bu yolculukla Kıbrıs'taki mevcut 50 yıllık ateşkes esnasında yaşanan travmaya ışık tutuyor. Mazi Birlikte ekibi, belgesel filmin yönetmeni Andreou ile konuşarak kendisi ve yaklaşan uzun metrajlı belgeseli hakkında bilgi edindi.
So I was raised in Nicosia by the airport. I have a Greek Cypriot father and a British mother. I was never really good at anything like that the education system here wanted us to focus on. I was always like a creative kid. And I focused on literature and arts and tried to do as many arts as I could. And leaving high school, I did a diploma and went and did fine art in the UK. And then I went and did an MFA in New York. I was lucky enough to be able to do that. And there I really delved further into filmmaking, but I was more in like a video art sort of section of my MFA, but also my undergrad in fine art. And specifically documentary filmmaking I started doing because I knew that I couldn't just be an artist, that it was only like really rich kids that could just make art. And so I started interning with a program in New York that's called Art 21 that made documentaries about artists. And that's where I sort of fell in love with the process of editing and filmmaking in general, and documentary filmmaking, where you can set the stage for something, but you can't control its elements. And that, of course, exists within fiction as well, but documentary really needs you to be improvisational in really creative ways, in really high pressure ways, but I love it so dearly because of that.
Actually, to delve a little bit deeper in a documentary, do you find that our imagination can sometimes not be as creative as what documentary or what reality can actually give us?
100%. And that's what the magic of like the real does for me. And when I find those moments, I like feel elation. But hunting for that and making that is like really stressful, but also so rewarding when you get it.
Good morning, how are you?
Love and Labor was your first short documentary that you made in 2017. If you can give me a little bit of background about that one.
Yeah, it was a short film about a couple that lives and works in New York City, and they created a life together based on like anti-imperialist ideas and supporting the Zapatistas, who are an indigenous group who created an autonomous space for themselves within the Mexican state, and they only support themselves by selling and trading their coffee. And so this group, this couple, they bring the Zapatista coffee to New York and as they put it, poison people with their anti-imperialist and anti-capitalist ideas by sharing their coffee and sharing their ideas in pretty much the most capitalist place in the world.
Motivation is what we talked about some years ago and said, why don't we do this performance of enjoying like the real world and going out of art, or having life become a performance?
So try to create our own system, and even if it is a system of two.
And this, obviously, for you to make a documentary about it, spoke to you or resonated with you in some way.
Yeah. I was, living and working in New York City for, by that point, 6-7 years, and I felt a deep connection to what they were trying to do and trying to bring people into understanding that there was a different way to live and that you didn't have to succumb to the forces of capitalism in terms of how you define yourself and your worth in labor, in terms of labor. Mm-hmm. And it was the first time that I really experimented with the form that I'm trying to develop further in Women Walk Home, this like sort of fiction and nonfiction play where I'm setting up a scenario, but I can't really control all the elements, but creating this sort of balance between the two.
I want to ask how Women Walk Home found you. Was it the archive footage? Was it a conversation?
So I was actually visiting here in 2022 for my brother's wedding, and it happened to be the same time that the women of Project Saison were putting on the play about Women Walk Home. And my mom showed me an Instagram advert about the play and was like, oh, me and your aunt and your grandma went to one of these. And I just didn't know what to say. I was shocked that she never told me about it, as I've come to understand so many of the next generation have felt this betrayal event. Betrayal is a harsh word, but sadness that we didn't know about it. That it was hidden within them. And I started from there, and literally I went to the RIC archive, to the Heródotos, and started looking up, Women Walk Home, and saw this incredible archive that was preserved. And I sort of saved all the links and just shut down for a few months, and then I went back to LA and I showed it to a few very trusted friends and collaborators, and they were like, this is incredible, we've never seen anything like this, especially from people that I respect and who are older than me and who have done this work so much longer than me, to tell me and have this encouragement and really push me to do something like this was really, it meant a lot to me. But I also sort of was maybe afraid to start it, maybe rejecting it a little bit in the beginning because of how overwhelmed, how much this trauma of this place has defined who we are as the next generation as well. I ran from it for a lot of years, as I think you do with trauma, and we know that from all of our, for any trauma. So I think it was the beginning of me sort of opening this wound for us all, maybe, yeah.
So it was Women Walk Home, but it's also Stephanie coming home in some ways, I think.
Yes. Very much so. Women Walk Home was a women's anti-occupation movement that was primarily organized in the South because of the lack of communication and ability for the women to come together.
Because it was based in the 1980s,
yes,
correct?
because it was based in the 80s. The first one happened in 1975, and the rest happened between 87 and 89. But literally 9 months after the invasion, the women came together to do this thing where they were just like, let's just take the refugees to their homes. People were still in tents at that time, and women boarded buses from their tents. Like, I literally have seen footage in Rick's archive of people doing this, and women do it. And I've actually spoken to people whose mothers did it. And from the 1975 march, where they walked up to the Riña, well, I think it's now where the checkpoint is now in Riña, but that's a little bit. I've gotten some differentiating opinions about where exactly they walked to, but they stopped there and they handed letters to the UN and to the Turkish soldiers to let them go home based on the UN resolutions. They weren't allowed to, of course, and then they had a long gap where they saw different political parties taking this idea and this messaging and walking up to the Green Line. And that's where they decided in 87 to come back, but to evolve.
That's a long period, though,
It
is
is a long period. It is a long break. I don't know if they wanted to do it again, but I know watching their strategy be co-opted by the political parties, they knew that because they were grassroots, because they were very creative women, they could do better, and they did. The next one, they broke past the UN, and they thwarted the UN. Okay, they came into a minefield that they didn't know in Aronas, and they stopped there, but they did go into the buffer zone. They did cross the Green Line. The next time they came up to the Turkish soldiers, they really thwarted the UN. The next time they were even bigger. They did it in 2 locations. Sadly, after that, internal politics disbanded them because they were infiltrated by the political parties, and it really divided them. But it was Diana puts it really beautifully. She said it was a circle that closed for them. Diana Markides is one of the leading figures, and she's prominent in the film as well. She's British, but she's married to a Cypriot, and who's very just a wonderful person, an organizer and creative thinker. And her husband also was the one that gave all the buses that took all the women everywhere, and so there's honorary men, we call them, who helped all the women organize this and were in the background and supported them. And Juice, who's Cleopatra's husband, who's now passed. Cleopatra Bayada is also another huge figure in the movement. He, at some point when they were all running towards the Green Line, he said to them, "You're on your own now, ladies, go." And you saw from the archives that all the men were clapping them and encouraging them to go home.
There's something very powerful about watching the women walk. I think it's even more powerful than watching men walk. I mean, we know the Million Men March in America, but there's something else about women walking. How did you feel when watching the footage?
I feel like I really it was an image that I needed. Being raised with the images of the women who were coming up to the Lidra Palace checkpoint every Sunday with their wearing black and holding pictures of their lost loved ones was an image as a child that I didn't know what to do with. I didn't know what to do with that level of pain. And that was the only one transmitted to us, of this sad woman who just stood there not knowing what to do with her fate. Even though I respect them deeply, and I don't think, and that's not their intention. And in fact, one of the leading figures of those women, and the woman symbol, as the South calls her, Harida Mandole, she was actually in Women Walk Home, and she was in the front. I don't know if you recognized her in the archives. I can point her out to you. But she's running with them, and she's there, and and she had this like beautifully active role in Women Walk Home. Yet the only representation I had as a child here was of the sad, crying woman who was at the mercy of others, whereas Women Walk Home took their fate into their own hands.
Did they believe from your interviews that they could make a difference?
Yeah, 100%. 100%, and that's why they did it.
And the intention was not just to draw attention. There was an intention to go beyond that.
It was. I mean, they used the material that they filmed, which I've rescued. They intentionally filmed it to make an advocacy film that they then took to the European Parliament, and that they lobbied, actually a very conservative British MP, Euro MP, to advocate and vote for a bill for asking for the refugees to go back to their homes. So they were a multi-pronged approach. It wasn't just the visual imagery. It wasn't just that they wanted to tell people that we're not scared to live with each other. We want to be with each other. This is a division that we don't accept, that it was imposed on us.
There were also Turkish Cypriots involved, albeit in England. If you want to
Yes.
let the viewers know about that.
A really beautiful and prominent figure that joined the marches is Aisha Hassan, who was an Islington councillor at the time, Turkish Cypriot woman, and she very beautifully elaborates and represents a Turkish Cypriot perspective for the marches, knowing that the Turkish Cypriot women that wanted to join in the north couldn't, and she could. And she came and joined them and was interviewed multiple times in the archive for this, for her representation, and stood very prominently as an anti-occupation and a person who wanted unity.
Stefani, Kıbrıs ve yurt dışında keşfettiği arşiv görüntülerini içeren bir video hazırladı. Bu videoyu yaptığı belgesele dikkat çekmek ve o yıllara dair bilgisi olan insanların ona ulaşmasını sağlamak amacıyla hazırladı.
I did screenings on both sides of the divide because I wanted everyone that wanted to see it to show up, whether that was whomever from the island, right? And whoever can't cross, or to make it easy for everyone. Of course, it was in Nicosia, which isn't accessible to everyone, but we're going to do more and do better. But part of the process of the film is bringing the archive out and evolving the way that I see the archive and me viewing the archive and bringing it to everyone. So we can see the effects of such archival imagery, but also what knowing your past and knowing what a movement did before can change and shift for us. The one on the Turkish Cypriot side made me anxious because I was worried only because I know that we all have gaps of knowledge and I don't know everything, as many of us. So, but it was, I loved the talk afterwards and the beauty of how much people's vulnerability was shown, and I really appreciated everyone's perspective. Even the one person who reacted a little bit negatively, saying that we shouldn't show our division, especially the Limga and Akhna moments. I respect that that's how she felt in those moments because she was a long-time peace activist. Her perspective is that she wants to show that as much as unity as we can, which I respect. I may not necessarily agree because that's kind of like pushing trauma down in my view. Because if you don't bring the pain out and expose it and understand it, then what are we doing? And we've done that for too long. So I was so moved. I was so moved by your reaction and everyone's reaction there, honestly, and it really gave me affirmation that we need to see these images for inspiration and solidarity.
Well, I think for me, I was there and I watched them, and of course, don't believe I've seen, well, especially with just women, but such movements actually in Cyprus.
Yeah.
And if it continued, do you believe that it could have actually created bigger shifts in at least helping to bring the communities together?
I 100%, because they really organized in a way that brought them together from across the political spectrum. What's really critical about movements when you study movement history is that you organize under one sentence that you all agree on. Whether everything else that you don't agree on, if you focus on that one sentence and you focus on how to make that real and true with your perspective, with everything that you're given, that's what they did, and that's what was successful up until that point. When that sentence and how to get that sentence across fell apart at the end, that's how it fell apart. But you know, the counter histories of movements across the world are hidden for a reason, and that's what we need to learn from and uncover and work towards knowing what our pasts are, so we can lead with inspiration from them. And we can't be starting from zero, because it feels like it's never ending if you start from zero every time. If you know your past histories and your past organizing histories, you can grow from their mistakes and their triumphs.
Until you came along, there was the play, so you mentioned that. But until you came along, it was almost forgotten. Why do you think such a movement was actually left in the archive?
Δύσκολο να ξέρουμε σίγουρα, γιατί αποσιωπήθηκε τόσο πολλά τούτη η κίνηση, τούτη η ιστορία του τόπου μας. Μπορούμε να υποθέσουμε ότι αποσιωπήθηκε από τα πολιτικά κόμματα, μπορεί να αποσιωπήθηκε και πολιτικά, γιατί είναι ένας τρόπος να είσαι ενεργός πολίτης που είναι δεχτός, τέλος πάντων, πέφτει μέσα στους υπολογισμένους τρόπους να είσαι ενεργός πολίτης. Αλλά αποσιωπήθηκε και από μέσα και από τις ίδιες και από όλες τις γυναίκες. Ας πούμε, είχε χιλιάδες γυναίκες που ήρθαν και όποιου μιλήσω και πει της μάμας του, της θείας του, της γιαγιάς του, του παππού του, της θείου τους, λαλούν τους, ναι, θυμούμε το, ναι, πία. Ο κάμεραμαν μου, ο σινεματόγραφερ μου ήταν μες στο σασέρ με την κάμερα. Όταν ήρθε την πρώτη φορά να κάνουμε τα γυρίσματα, ερώτησε τον η γυναίκα μες στο σασέρ. Τι γυρίζεις, είπεν της, για το γυναίκες επιστρέφουν, επία κι εγώ. Του ήταν πάρα πολλά κοινό πράγμα. Άρα αποσιωπήθηκε σε μια γενιά ολόκληρη. Είναι ένα θέμα που κοιτάζουμε μες στο ντοκιμαντέρ το ίδιο. Έχει πολλαπλές όψεις. Έχει ότι εντρέπονταν ότι έκαναν παραπάνω για τον τόπο τους, ότι ήταν έναν effort που επίε χαμένο ή δεν αλλάξαν κάτι, και προσπαθώ να τους το αλλάξω λίγο τούτη την ιδέα. Μες στις ίδιες, απλά επειδή ξέρω ότι έστω και να μην αλλάξεις κάτι, μπορεί physically τέλος πάντων, αλλάσεις με εμένα με το αρχείο και με το visual representation που κάνεις. Τα screenings που έκαναμε ήταν για να δείξω μόνο τα αρχαιακά υλικά, ενώ το ντοκιμαντέρ είναι η διαδικασία της αποκάλυψης του αρχείου. Άρα εγώ είμαι είμαι ένας από τους χαρακτήρες ως filmmaker μες στο έργο που ανακαλύφω το αρχείο και ξεκινώ τη διαδικασία να βγάλω το αρχείο που τα αρχεία. Άρα, τελευταία γυρίσματα που έκαναμε, προβάλαμε τα αρχεία σε διάφορα τείχη της Λευκωσίας, όπως περνά ο κόσμος, για να το νιώθουμε ότι είναι μέρος μας και μέρος του τόπου μας. Τα screenings τα έκανα στα πλαίσια των γυρισμάτων για να τα φέρω του κόσμου, για να έχουμε την αντίδραση του κόσμου και να εξελιχθεί με τον τρόπο το αρχείο να βγαίνει προς τα έξω.
What is the intention? Is it to deal with trauma, or is it to inspire, or is it all of it?
I think it's all of it, because I think when you deal with the trauma of it, you're hopefully gonna inspire people that it's not unsolvable, and it's not something that we can accept as the status quo, and that grassroots organizing is really fundamental to our political landscape, because often political parties can make us feel like those are the only ways we can act, by voting, by showing up. And that is one way, but there are many, many others. And to show our discontent with, even though we still have checkpoints, we still have a line too. We still have a line in our land that isn't divided geographically, but is divided unnaturally. I'm hoping it can be inspiration that we don't accept the line however it exists.
Kadınlar Eve Yürüyor isimli belgesel, hazırlık aşamasından itibaren geniş çapta uluslararası takdir toplamış ve birçok teşvik ve destek yanı sıra Cannes Docs Marché du Film ödülüne layık görülmüştür. Filmin 2026 yılının sonlarında tamamlanması bekleniyor.